is Nadia Shihab. I am a Bay Area-based artist working primarily in film and music. When I started playing solo, that's when I really discovered, delay pedals and loop pedals and electronics and drum machines, and that's what I primarily use when I play now. So I still have these acoustic instruments, I still have my violin, but then I sort of bring that into a delay pedal, and I use a keyboard and drum machine, and I loop and layer. I'll create my own sounds, like I'll loop and layer my voice and then bring it in sort of as a percussive device. Other times, I think, in a recent show I had the theme song to Iftah Ya Simsim, which is the Sesame Street of the Middle East, and it's something that I remember growing up when we would go visit my family in Baghdad, listening to that song, and so I had it and I began to sample that and layer it and kind of tweak it and experiment with it until it didn't really resemble the song anymore, but it still was something that referenced a place that I had come from. I think for me, my music and the way I approach it very much comes from this space and this place of improvisation. I'm not really a songwriter. When I do perform, I rarely perform the same pieces more than once, and that's just something about the way my brain is hardwired. I really enjoy improvisation. There are issues of sort of place and attachment to place and migration and displacement and that emotional experience of dislocation. These aren't necessarily things that I grew up feeling, but they're things that I saw my parents and the people around me kind of grow up grappling with. The challenges that immigrants face, the nostalgia that they are constantly sort of coming up in their life over and over again, the alienation that a lot of Middle Eastern immigrants feel, especially in the US. Those are some topics that I find myself returning to. For me, the editing process of documentary filmmaking is analogous to like the screenwriting process of a fiction film. It's in the editing process that I really find my story and find those narrative threads. I often go into a story having some questions in mind, but it isn't until I actually look at my footage and start to make these connections that the story comes together. And for me, the storyboard is really helpful in making those connections. So Emel's Garden is the story of an older couple living in northern Iraq, my great aunt and uncle, who are trying to move on with life after the war. And the way it sort of unfolds is that as my great aunt is working on renovating the house and rebuilding the home and having day laborers come through and kind of trying to move life forward, her husband, who is much older, spends a lot of his time in the garden singing these old Turkmen folk songs from his childhood. So it's almost as, while she's trying to move life forward, he's kind of slipping back into the past. And mixed into that, you see a little bit of the transformation that the city of Kirkuk is going through with these different ethnic groups that are living there after the war. The technical experience of trying to shoot in Iraq when you don't have a crew, and when you're constantly getting stopped by police telling you to stop filming, when even your family is sort of censoring what you should and shouldn't show. The big victory that I had making Emel's Garden was I realized that it's okay to tell a story in your own voice. If you do it in a way that's true to you, I think eventually people will see the film and they'll appreciate it. So I'm currently working on a feature-length experimental documentary that enters the world and art studio of an Iraqi artist living in Texas who's been living there for 30 years. And the way this story kind of plays out is when this overzealous developer embarks on this project in the center of the city, he sets off this wave of gentrification back into the city center. When that happens, her sense of security and refuge that she spent the last 30 years building is threatened. And it's a film that brings together these very American narratives about displacement and gentrification and urban development with these more global narratives around the immigrant experience and dislocation, that emotional place. I'm excited about it.